The young man urinates on the grave of a deceased person. What happens next is terrifying. Listen, guys, do you believe this? Charlie raised his glass, his voice slightly slurred from the alcohol. I'm not afraid of anything in this world. Not afraid of anyone, not afraid of demons, not afraid of gods. A burst of laughter erupted. Michael, a young man with curly hair and shifty eyes, clapped Charlie firmly on the shoulder. Oh yeah? If that's the case, we've got a challenge for you. Charlie raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What challenge? Jane, the only girl in the group, glanced away, her voice dropping to a whisper. Do you dare to go to the cemetery at the edge of the village? The atmosphere immediately tensed. That cemetery was a place everyone avoided. There was a grave there that no one dared to go near, the grave of Mr. Elliot. He had once been a cruel landowner, exploiting the villagers to the bone. When he died, not a single person mourned him, but the curse surrounding him had been passed down through generations. Ralph shook his head, his voice tense. Don't be stupid, Charlie. Everyone knows the story of Mr. Elliot. If you disrespect his grave, you'll be in real trouble. Charlie laughed, tossing his empty glass aside and standing up. What trouble? There's no such thing as ghosts. If you guys want to challenge me, then I'll do it. Michael clapped his hands, delighted. All right, then let's go. But you're not going alone, Ralph is going with you. Ralph jolted. What? No, come on, Ralph. Charlie threw an arm around his friend, pulling him to his feet. Are you scared? Don't let me down. Ralph bit his lip, hesitation clear in his eyes. But under the teasing gazes of Michael and Jane, he couldn't refuse. With a sigh, he reluctantly nodded. They left the tavern, walking through the dark streets toward the abandoned cemetery. The path was eerily quiet. The wind rustled through the trees, creating whispers that sounded almost like voices of the dead. When they reached the cemetery gate, Ralph swallowed hard. The place looked even more terrifying than he had imagined. Gravestones lay scattered, overgrown with wild grass that obscured the path. The air was freezing, uncomfortably so. Charlie smirked, stepping inside without hesitation. See? There's nothing here. We're just taking a nighttime stroll. Ralph remained at the gate, too afraid to enter. He shuddered when he saw a white owl perched on a nearby tombstone, its eyes glowing in the darkness. Charlie, I think we should turn back. Don't be such a coward. Charlie waved dismissively and continued deeper into the cemetery. Ralph had no choice but to follow. After a while, they stopped in front of a large, weathered grave. The name carved into the stone sent chills down their spines. Mr. Elliot Roberts, 1865 to 1910, the traitor shall never find peace. Ralph swallowed hard, his voice trembling. Charlie, that's enough. We've come here, you've won. Let's go. But Charlie wasn't listening. He stared at the gravestone, his eyes glinting with reckless arrogance. This is the guy everyone is so scared of. Just a lifeless rock. Charlie scoffed. Mr. Elliot, if you really exist, show yourself and face me. Shoo. Ralph hissed in panic, looking around. Don't talk nonsense. You don't know what you're doing. Charlie just laughed harder. He turned around, shouting loudly, full of mockery, listen up, everyone. I'm standing right in front of Mr. Elliot's grave, and I haven't seen a single ghost yet. From a distance, Michael and Jane laughed, cheering him on. Charlie, you really are fearless. But Ralph didn't laugh. He felt a sudden chill rush through the air, making his skin crawl. Charlie, please, I'm begging you. Stop insulting him. We need to leave right now. Charlie waved a hand dismissively, his expression smug. You're worrying too much, Ralph. It's just an old grave, nothing more. I'll prove it to you. He took a step forward, lifting his foot as if he were about to kick the tombstone. Ralph panicked, grabbing Charlie's arm. "No. Are you crazy?" Charlie stopped, looking at his friend with a mocking expression. "Ralph, do you really believe in this nonsense? We're not living in the Middle Ages anymore." Just then, a strong gust of wind swept through the cemetery. The trees howled as if they were screaming. A strange sound echoed from deep within the earth, like someone moaning in pain. Ralph tightened his grip on Charlie's hand, his voice trembling with panic. "Listen. We should," but Charlie didn't let Ralph finish. He yanked his hand away, scoffing. "Come on, you're being way too cowardly." He took another step toward the grave, completely unaware that in the darkness, a pair of invisible eyes had begun watching him. Charlie stood before Mr. Elliot's grave, his eyes glinting with both drunkenness and defiance. He rubbed his chin, as if contemplating something amusing. Meanwhile, Ralph felt suffocated, struggling to breathe. The wind that had just passed carried the damp, moldy scent of the abandoned ground, a musty, stale odor that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth. "Charlie, I'm begging you, we've come here, you've proved your point. Let's just leave." Ralph's voice dropped to a desperate whisper, his eyes darting around anxiously. The cemetery was becoming more terrifying by the second. But Charlie simply laughed, a laugh full of arrogance. "Do you seriously believe in this crap, Ralph? Ghosts? Curses? It's all just made-up nonsense to scare weaklings like you." He raised a hand, pointing at the tombstone in front of him. "If Mr. Elliot is really so terrifying, then why doesn't he show up?" From a distance, Michael and Jane watched, feeling both nervous and excited. "Charlie really is insane," Michael muttered. Jane crossed her arms, shooting Michael a sidelong glance. "Insane or just stupid, we'll see." Charlie tilted his head toward the gravestone, his mocking voice cutting through the still night air. "If he were still alive, I'd kick him right in the face. Ghosts? Curses? What a load of nonsense." Ralph clenched his fists, his breathing quickening. "Charlie, stop. You don't know what you're messing with." But Ralph's warning was completely ignored. With reckless arrogance, Charlie took another step forward, standing right at the edge of the tombstone. He squinted, smirking. "I'll prove to you all that nothing's going to happen." To Ralph's horror, Charlie suddenly unzipped his pants and began urinating directly onto Mr. Elliot's grave. Michael's eyes widened in disbelief. "That bastard actually did it." Jane immediately turned away, shuddering in disgust. "Charlie has completely lost his mind." Ralph, however, was frozen in place. A wave of cold dread crashed over him, as if he had just been drenched in ice water. "Charlie! Stop right now." He lunged forward, trying to pull Charlie away from the grave. Charlie only burst into laughter, unfazed by his friend's panic. "See? I'm still standing, completely fine." He zipped up his pants, exhaling in satisfaction, as if he had just won some kind of foolish dare. But at that very moment, suddenly, an icy gust of wind slammed into them, so powerful that the surrounding trees shook violently. The air thickened, becoming heavy, like something unseen had just spilled out from beneath the ground. Jane screamed as the nearby street lamp flickered wildly before shutting off completely, plunging the entire cemetery into absolute darkness. Ralph felt his entire body tremble. A dreadful sensation crept over him, like hundreds of invisible eyes were watching from the shadows, slithering into his very bones. I don't like this at all," Michael whispered, his voice no longer carrying any trace of amusement. Charlie, although slightly startled by the strange phenomenon, tried to maintain a calm demeanor. He glanced around, shrugged. "It's probably just the wind. You guys are overreacting." But just as he finished speaking, a strange sound echoed from beneath the ground. Thud, thud, thud. Footsteps. Clear, slow, heavy. Ralph's eyes widened, his heart pounding. Did you hear that? Michael stammered, heard it, loud and clear. Charlie tried to stay composed, but a chill ran down his spine. Is someone there? He shouted, but no one answered. Thud, thud, thud. The footsteps continued, this time closer. Jane trembled, stepping backward. We have to get out of here now. Ralph nodded frantically. Charlie, please, let's just go. But Charlie remained still, his face pale, still trying to act tough. There's no one here. It's just, crack. A sharp sound rang out. Everyone jumped as they looked down. The tombstone of Mr. Elliot had a long crack running right through the stone. Charlie felt his throat go dry. This couldn't be a coincidence. Ralph was too terrified to think. He grabbed Charlie's arm and yanked hard. Go. Now. Charlie could no longer hold his composure. He took a step back. But at that moment, he felt something, a cold gust of air, sweep past his back. Suddenly, his breath caught in his throat. It was as if an invisible hand was tightening around his neck. He couldn't move. The air around him seemed frozen. The howling wind vanished, replaced by something else. Whispering. A low, raspy voice, distant yet right next to Charlie's ear. You belong to me. Charlie froze. His entire body locked up. He tried to breathe, but he couldn't. His throat constricted. His limbs went numb. It felt as if his life force was being drained away. Ralph screamed, Charlie. Michael and Jane also shouted in panic. As if waking from a nightmare, Charlie suddenly staggered backward, coughing violently. His chest ached as if something had been crushing it. No one cared about anything else anymore. Run! Ralph yelled. Without hesitation, all four of them turned and bolted out of the cemetery. Behind them, the wind howled, and in the darkness, the footsteps continued. Thud, thud, thud. Mr. Elliot had awakened. Charlie ran like mad down the dark road leading out of the cemetery, his breath ragged, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. The night wind lashed against his face like icy whips, but it did nothing to clear his mind. Behind him, Ralph, Michael, and Jane were also sprinting, none of them daring to look back. The eerie footsteps still echoed behind them. Thud, thud, thud. As if something was chasing them, yet no one could see a thing. Ralph shouted, his voice trembling, faster. Don't stop. Michael gasped, his face pale, what the hell is chasing us? No one answered. No one dared to think about the answer. As they reached the village gate, the footsteps suddenly stopped. There was nothing but the sound of the wind whistling through the old rooftops. The cemetery behind them was swallowed in deep darkness, as if nothing had ever happened. But Charlie knew. Something had followed them out of that place. He stopped, bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. His chest ached as if someone had been squeezing it. Jane clutched Michael's arm, her voice still trembling. That couldn't have just been a coincidence. Everything that just happened. Do you still think it was just a joke, Charlie? Charlie looked up, his eyes vacant. He didn't answer. Ralph stepped forward, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. Charlie, are you okay? Charlie shoved Ralph's hand away. I'm fine. I'm just tired. But Ralph didn't believe him. He had seen Charlie scared. Truly scared. Michael sighed, shaking his head. All right, let's just split up and head home. I don't want to be out here any longer. Jane nodded. Me neither. It's best if we all go home. We'll talk later. The group quickly dispersed, each carrying an unsettling feeling deep inside. Charlie dragged himself home, his mind spinning with the images of what had just happened. He wanted to tell himself it was just the alcohol and his imagination. But a part of him knew that wasn't true. Something had touched him. His small house was tucked away in a quiet alley. Normally, it gave him a sense of security. But tonight, as he stepped inside, the air inside suddenly felt strangely heavy. He shut the door, standing still for a few seconds, listening. Everything was silent. Too silent. Charlie shrugged, laughing at himself. "You're letting fear control you, idiot." He walked into his bedroom, tossed his jacket onto a chair, and collapsed onto the bed. But the moment he closed his eyes, whispering, Charlie shot up. The whisper was so faint it was almost impossible to hear, but it was there, someone was saying something. He swallowed hard, listening. Nothing. Just the wind outside the window. He sighed, telling himself he was just being overly sensitive. Exhausted, he lay back down, pulled the blanket over himself, and tried to sleep. But the moment he closed his eyes, whispering, right next to his ear, Charlie screamed, leaping out of bed, cold sweat breaking out all over his body. His eyes darted around the room, searching, but no one was there. The room was exactly the same as when he had entered. But the air had changed. It was colder. Shivering, he walked to the table, poured himself a glass of water, and gulped it down. As he set the glass down, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror hanging on the wall. And then, there was a figure standing behind him. Charlie froze. His throat tightened, his eyes widened in horror. In the mirror, right behind him, was a tall man with a distorted face, hollow eyes as dark and bottomless as an abyss. Charlie spun around. No one was there. Panting, he turned back to the mirror. No one. Shaking, he staggered back and collapsed onto the bed. What the hell was happening to him? He dreamt that he was standing in a dark room, with no windows, no way out. In front of him stood a tall shadow. The man stepped closer. Each footstep echoed like nails being hammered into a coffin. Then he stopped, right in front of Charlie. He leaned in, his twisted face looming over Charlie. And then, in a deep, guttural voice, he said, "You dared to challenge me. Now, you will belong to me." Charlie screamed. He jolted awake, drenched in sweat. But he couldn't move. His entire body was pinned down to the bed. His chest felt heavy, as if someone was sitting on top of him. He tried to scream, but his throat was being squeezed shut. Then he felt an invisible hand grip his ankle. Tighter. Tighter. Charlie struggled, but it was useless. It felt like he was being dragged down. Down into some dark place. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't fight back. Then everything went black. Charlie shot up, gasping for air, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. Cold sweat dripped down his temples, his shirt soaked through. He was still in his room. His eyes darted around, his fingers clutching the blanket as if it was the only thing anchoring him to reality. The room was silent, but that silence didn't bring him any comfort. The sensation of that invisible hand gripping his ankle still lingered, a throbbing ache that wouldn't fade. Was it a dream, or wasn't it? Charlie took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He shakily swung his legs over the bed, but the moment his feet touched the floor, a wave of cold washed over him. "It's just my imagination," he muttered, trying to reassure himself. But at that moment, a gust of wind swept through the room, despite all the windows being shut. Charlie stiffened. The wind kept blowing, and then, a distant voice echoed. "You belong to me." Charlie jerked around, his heart nearly stopping. No one was there. But he knew something was. He lunged for the light switch and flicked it on. The warm yellow glow flooded the room, but it did nothing to dispel the heavy feeling of being watched. Alright, just stay calm. He decided to wash his face, hoping it would help him snap out of this nightmare. Stepping into the bathroom, Charlie turned on the faucet, letting the cold water run over his hands. When he looked up at the mirror, the shadow was there again, standing right behind him. Charlie screamed, whipping around, no one. He turned back to the mirror. Everything was normal again. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it was about to explode. He gasped for breath, his hands gripping the edge of the sink. This can't be. I must be imagining things, but deep down, he knew the truth wasn't that simple. The next day, Charlie stepped out of his house with dark circles under his eyes from a sleepless night. He hadn't been able to go back to sleep after that nightmare. Even though the sun was up, the fear still clung to him. Ralph was already waiting at the corner of the street. When he saw Charlie's exhausted state, he frowned. "You okay?" Charlie waved a hand dismissively, his voice hoarse. "Just lost some sleep." Ralph didn't buy it. "Are you sure?" Charlie took a deep breath and looked straight into his friend's eyes. "I told you, I'm fine." Ralph sighed but didn't press the issue. They headed to their usual cafe, where Michael and Jane were already waiting. The two of them were whispering to each other, but the moment they saw Charlie, they fell silent. Jane studied Charlie for a moment before speaking bluntly. "You look like a zombie." Charlie forced a smirk. "Thanks for the compliment." Michael rested his elbows on the table, his tone more serious than usual. "Something happened to you, didn't it?" Charlie opened his mouth to deny it, but then closed it again. Ralph, Michael, and Jane were all waiting for an answer. Finally, he sighed. "All right. I don't know what it was, but," he recounted everything from the night before, the nightmare, the invisible hand, the voice, and the shadow in the mirror. When he finished, there was silence. Then Jane shuddered. "I told you, you made Mr. Elliot angry." Michael nodded, his voice grave. "You need to do something before this gets worse." Ralph stared at Charlie. "You have to find someone who can help. Someone who understands this stuff." Charlie scoffed. "You mean, like an exorcist? Come on. You think this is funny?" Ralph snapped. "Look at yourself. You know damn well this isn't normal." Charlie clenched his fists but didn't argue. He knew Ralph was right. The second night, Charlie returned home, his mind heavy with Ralph's words. He didn't want to believe it. But the truth was, something was really wrong. He shut the door, locked it tight, and headed straight to his bedroom. Tonight, he was going to sleep. He wouldn't let anything disturb him. He turned off the light and pulled the blanket over his head. But the moment he closed his eyes, footsteps. Inside his room. Charlie froze. The footsteps moved slowly toward his bed. He held his breath, too afraid to move. Thud, thud, thud. They stopped. Right next to his bed. Charlie felt an icy breath against his neck. He wanted to scream, but his throat felt blocked. Then. Bang! The lights in the room suddenly flickered back on. Charlie shot upright, gasping for air. The room was empty. But the bedroom door was wide open. Charlie was certain he had closed it before going to sleep. Cold sweat dripped down his back. Something was inside his house. Sitting on the bed, he stared at the open bedroom door. His throat was dry, and his heart pounded wildly in his chest. Someone had opened that door. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. His trembling hand reached for the flashlight on his nightstand, and he slowly got out of bed. The entire house was eerily silent. He stepped into the hallway, each footstep pressing into an invisible fear. The kitchen was empty. The living room showed no signs of anything unusual. Everything was exactly as it had been before he went to sleep. But the feeling of being watched still hadn't left him. He couldn't take it anymore. Without hesitation, Charlie grabbed his phone and called Ralph. The dial tone rang. "Hello." Ralph's groggy voice came through. "Ralph. I need to see you. Right now." 30 minutes later, Charlie sat in the village's old cafe. The sky was still dim, the place nearly empty except for a few elderly patrons quietly sipping their coffee. Ralph arrived earlier than expected, wearing a thin jacket, his face still marked with traces of sleep. When he saw Charlie's distressed expression, his brows immediately furrowed. "What happened?" Charlie gripped his coffee cup tightly, his voice shaking. "It won't stop, Ralph. The whispers, the footsteps, the door opening on its own. I can't take this anymore." Ralph sat down, his expression serious. "I told you. You need to find someone who can help you." Charlie closed his eyes, trying to suppress the fear rising inside him. "Do you have anyone in mind?" Ralph hesitated for a moment, then lowered his voice. "Sophia." Charlie frowned. "Who?" "Sophia Mitchell," Ralph said quietly. "She knows about these things. People say her grandmother was a Karandra, someone who could communicate with spirits." Charlie scoffed. "You really think I need a witch?" Ralph glared at him. "Do you want to keep being haunted until you lose your mind?" Charlie fell silent. A part of him still wanted to deny everything, but another part was screaming at him that Ralph was right. He nodded. "Fine. Take me to her." Sophia lived in a small house deep in the woods. By the time Ralph and Charlie arrived, the sun had fully risen, its light filtering through the trees, but it did nothing to chase away the eerie chill that surrounded the place. Sophia was already standing at the front door, as if she had been expecting them. She was a young woman, around 25, with long black hair tied back neatly and sharp, mysterious eyes. "You're here," she said calmly. Ralph nodded. "We need help." Sophia's gaze fixed on Charlie. "It's you, isn't it?" Charlie swallowed hard and nodded. She crossed her arms, her expression cold. "What did you do?" Charlie hesitated. Ralph answered for him. "He disrespected Mr. Elliot's grave." Sophia's face instantly paled. "Are you insane?" Charlie stiffened. He hadn't expected such a strong reaction. Sophia stepped closer, her piercing eyes seeming to read straight into his soul. "Do you even know who Mr. Elliot was?" Charlie shook his head. Sophia took a deep breath before speaking slowly. "Mr. Elliot wasn't just a cruel landowner. He was cursed. People say that before he died, he performed a dark ritual, one that bound his soul to eternal existence in darkness. His grave isn't just a resting place, it's a seal." Charlie felt a chill run down his spine. So you mean," Sophia stared at him. "You broke the seal. And now, he has chosen you." Charlie's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst from his chest. Ralph gripped his friend's shoulder tightly. "Is there any way to stop this?" Sophia remained silent for a moment, then said, "There's still time. But not much. You have to go back to the grave and make amends, before it's too late." Charlie bit his lip. "Make amends how?" Sophia locked eyes with him. "You have to apologize. You have to perform a ritual at his grave." Charlie clenched his fists. "And if I don't?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Do you really want to find out?" Silence fell between them. A gentle breeze drifted past, carrying the cold presence of something unseen. Finally, Charlie exhaled sharply. "Fine. I'll do it." Sophia nodded. "Good. But I have one condition." Charlie frowned. "What condition?" Sophia's expression was firm. I'm going with you. Charlie's eyes widened. You want to go back there? Sophia nodded. Do you really think a simple apology will be enough? No. You've awakened something ancient and full of hatred. If you don't have guidance, you won't escape him. Ralph looked at Charlie, his voice heavy with concern. We don't have another choice. Charlie took a deep breath. He knew Ralph was right. He had gone too far. There was no turning back now. Later that day, after leaving Sophia's house, Charlie's mind felt heavy. Her words echoed in his thoughts like a relentless warning bell. You've awakened something ancient and full of hatred. As they walked along the dirt path back to the village, Ralph shot Charlie a worried glance. Are you really going to do what Sophia says? Charlie shrugged, trying to appear calm, but his eyes betrayed his unease. I don't know. Maybe I should. Ralph frowned. You have to. Don't forget what happened these past 2 nights. Charlie said nothing. He couldn't deny the truth anymore. Something was following him. That night, Charlie sat in his room, his eyes locked on the door he had securely locked. The room was silent, but he no longer felt safe. He checked the clock. 1:47 a.m. Everything in the house was exactly as it had been. But the air carried a suffocating tension, as if even the atmosphere had grown heavier. He decided to sleep. He had to sleep. Pulling the blanket over himself, he shut his eyes. But just as he began to drift off, the bedroom door creaked open. Creak, creak. Charlie froze. He didn't open his eyes. He didn't dare open his eyes. Someone had just opened the door. Charlie's heart pounded wildly. His breathing was heavy. He could feel something standing right in front of his bed. He couldn't see it. But it was there. The air was freezing. Then, a whisper brushed against his ear. Now, you belong to me. Charlie's eyes shot open. The room was still pitch dark. The door was still wide open. He held his breath, straining to listen. Nothing. Except. A low, raspy chuckle echoed from the corner of the room. Charlie jolted upright, grabbing the flashlight from his nightstand. He shined the beam into the dark corner. No one was there. But the mirror on the wall cracked on its own. Charlie stood frozen, staring at the mirror. A long fracture spread across the glass, running all the way to the wooden frame. And then, from within the mirror, the face of Mr. Elliot appeared. His eyes were hollow, pitch-black voids. His mouth opened, but instead of words, only a hateful, agonized wail escaped. Charlie stumbled backward, his entire body trembling. The whisper returned, clearer this time. I have chosen you. Charlie screamed and hurled the flashlight at the mirror. Crash! The glass shattered into pieces. But the laughter didn't stop. It echoed inside his head. The next morning, Ralph's face turned pale when he saw Charlie walk into the cafe, looking like a ghost himself. What the hell happened to you? Charlie sat down, his hands gripping the edge of the table. His voice was hoarse. Mr. Elliot, he appeared in the mirror. Ralph froze. Jane and Michael had just walked in, and upon hearing those words, they stopped dead in their tracks. What? Jane whispered, horrified. Charlie recounted everything that had happened the night before. When he finished, the air around them felt thick with tension, making it hard to breathe. Michael licked his lips, his voice unsteady. I didn't think things would go this far. Jane shuddered. You can't delay this anymore, Charlie. We need to see Sophia now. Charlie nodded. He couldn't take it anymore. Sophia, when they arrived at Sophia's house, she was already waiting for them. You haven't been able to sleep, have you? she asked, her voice calm but her eyes serious. Charlie let out a hollow laugh. Not sleeping, and not escaping either. Sophia sighed. We have to act quickly. The curse is growing stronger. Ralph swallowed hard. How much time does he have? Sophia was silent for a moment. Then, in a grave tone, she said, if nothing is done, Mr. Elliot will completely take over him in 3 days. The group stood in stunned silence. Charlie's face drained of color. 3 days? Sophia nodded. And if that happens, your soul will never be free again. A strong gust of wind blew past them, making the wind chimes hanging from Sophia's porch rattle eerily. Ralph clenched his fists. Then, what do we need to do? Sophia locked eyes with Charlie. We're going back to the cemetery. Tonight. Charlie felt a chill run down his spine. He had no other choice. Sitting on his bed, he gripped the blanket tightly, his eyes locked onto the bedroom door. The clock struck 11:57 p.m. Just a few more minutes until midnight, and he had the terrible feeling that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same again. Ralph and Michael had offered to stay with him, but Charlie refused. He knew that no one could protect him from whatever was haunting him. The air in the room was suffocatingly thick. He could feel it. It was here. But he remained seated, waiting. 12 a.m. Thud, thud, thud. Footsteps echoed just outside the hallway. Charlie froze. No one else had the keys to his house. The door was still locked. But something was walking just beyond his bedroom door. Holding his breath, he felt sweat trickle down his forehead. The footsteps stopped. Right in front of his door. Charlie clenched his fists. He couldn't run anymore. Slowly, he stood up, taking careful steps toward the door. His throat was dry, his head spinning. When he was only inches away, the door suddenly slammed open. Bang! An icy wind rushed into the room, snuffing out the only remaining light. Charlie stumbled backward, his heart hammering. A shadowy figure stood in the doorway. Tall. Twisted. Eyes as deep and hollow as a black abyss. Mr. Elliot. Charlie tried to scream, but the sound caught in his throat. The shadow lunged at him. A wave of cold engulfed his body. Charlie collapsed to the floor. In the darkness. Charlie opened his eyes. Where was he? Everything around him was pitch black. He tried to stand, but his legs were numb. There was no sound. No light. Just endless darkness. Ralph, he called weakly, but no one answered. Then a voice rang out. You cannot escape. Charlie's chest tightened. His breathing grew heavier. He spun around, trying to find the source of the voice. But there was nothing. Only darkness, shifting and closing in around him. The darkness was swallowing him whole. Now, you are mine. Charlie screamed. An invisible hand clamped around his throat, dragging him downward. He struggled, but it was useless. The darkness tightened around him. He was sinking. Sinking into a deep, endless void. No light. No hope. Only despair. Charlie tried to open his mouth, to cry out for help, but his voice was strangled by an unspeakable terror. His eyes widened, but in front of him, there was only the twisted face of Mr. Elliot. Then everything went silent. Beyond reality, Ralph felt something was wrong. He sat on his chair, staring at his phone screen, waiting for a message from Charlie. But nothing came. 1:30 a.m. Too long. Too quiet. A terrible feeling crept into Ralph's mind. He grabbed his coat and left the house without hesitation. Michael and Jane were already outside his door, their faces filled with worry. He's not answering, Jane said. Ralph nodded, biting his lip. I know. Let's go. The three of them rushed toward Charlie's house. The door was still locked. Ralph pounded on it. Charlie. Are you in there? No answer. Michael stepped back, then threw his weight against the door. Bang! The door burst open. Inside, it was completely dark. Ralph flicked on his flashlight. Charlie. The three of them stepped inside, moving cautiously. The house was a mess, as if someone had fought desperately. The bedroom door was wide open. Charlie lay motionless on the floor. Jane screamed. Charlie. She rushed forward, shaking him. Charlie. Wake up. Charlie's eyes opened. But they were empty. His lips moved slightly. A voice that wasn't his spoke. Too late. All three of them froze, staring at Charlie's hollow eyes. A chilling silence filled the room, making it impossible to breathe. Ralph dropped to his knees beside his friend, gently patting his cheek, trying to reach him. Charlie, wake up. Are you okay? But Charlie just stared ahead, unblinking. His lips were no longer moving, yet that same cold, lifeless voice echoed through the room, sending ice through Ralph's veins. There is no escape. Michael and Jane exchanged horrified glances. Jane clutched Ralph's arm. Do something. We can't leave him like this. Ralph clenched his fists, his face filled with pain and desperation. Charlie, you have to hear me. You can't let him take you. You have to fight. But Charlie remained silent. A cold wind swept through the room, rattling the door. The lights flickered, then went out. A massive shadow rose from the far end of the room. Ralph jumped to his feet, yanking Charlie toward him. Don't let him take you. But Charlie's own hand suddenly clenched around Ralph's arm. An invisible force was holding him down, pulling him away from reality. Michael scrambled for his phone, frantically dialing Sophia. No signal. Jane panicked, kneeling beside Charlie. Charlie. We need her. We need Sophia now. The laughter echoed through the darkness. Charlie remained silent, his hollow eyes staring into nothingness. For a long moment, as the air grew heavier and the shadows thickened around them, a chilling chuckle rippled through the blackest corner of the room. It bounced off the walls, a final taunt. It sounded like something from hell itself, suffocating the entire group with sheer terror. Then, Sophia arrived. She stepped into the room, her expression firm and determined. Don't panic. She approached Charlie, her voice steady as she began chanting ancient words she had learned long ago. Charlie, listen to me. You have to fight. Ralph and Michael stood behind her, their eyes filled with hope, but their hearts still heavy with fear. Jane clutched Charlie's hand, whispering desperately into his ear. Charlie, don't let him take you. You can't become a part of him. She didn't know what she was doing, only that if they didn't save Charlie now, she might lose her best friend forever. Suddenly, a faint light began to glow from within Charlie's body. It was weak, but it was enough to push back some of the overwhelming darkness. Sophia continued her prayer, raising her hands as if summoning a power only she could wield. Charlie, fight back. Take control of your body. Don't let the darkness consume you. The light inside Charlie grew stronger, resisting the force trying to claim him. But then, a violent surge erupted from Charlie's body, forcing Sophia and Jane backward. No. I will not let you take my soul. Charlie's voice had returned, but it wasn't his own. It was Mr. Elliot. Ralph's blood ran cold as he saw his friend's face distort into something else entirely. But before he could step forward to pull Charlie back, a brilliant light exploded through the room. It was blinding, swallowing everything in its radiance. The darkness shrieked. It couldn't withstand the light. Charlie screamed, this time, it was his own voice. The brightness gradually faded, leaving behind a dim glow. When the room returned to normal, Charlie was on his knees, his body trembling with exhaustion. He reached for Ralph, his voice weak. I couldn't fight alone. Ralph let out a relieved breath, pulling him up. You don't have to fight alone. We're always here. Sophia remained silent for a moment before offering a soft smile. It's done. But remember this, Charlie, if you ever disrespect the dead again, no one will be able to save you. Charlie met her gaze, gratitude filling his exhausted eyes. I understand. I was wrong. I will never do that again. Michael stepped forward, giving Charlie a reassuring pat on the shoulder. All right, let's go home. It's over. But deep down, Charlie knew, the fear hadn't completely left him. Because even though life would move on, the past would always follow him. And some curses never truly end. The next morning, Charlie woke up feeling different. He no longer felt the shadows pressing in, no longer sensed Mr. Elliot lurking in the corners of his mind. But as soon as he opened his eyes, a painful truth hit him. This wasn't the end. Everything he had been through, it was only the beginning of something much, much worse. Outside, his friends stood by his door, silent, waiting for him to open it. When he finally did, they saw a different Charlie. The panic was gone. But his eyes carried an exhaustion that couldn't be erased. He had won against the darkness, but not in the way he had hoped. Ralph was the first to step inside, followed by Michael and Jane. Charlie, Ralph asked cautiously. Are you okay? Charlie gave a slight nod. I'm fine. But the moment he spoke, his voice came out rough, as if Mr. Elliot was still lingering somewhere deep within his mind. But not everything is over, Charlie continued. I feel like I'm being called somewhere. Somewhere I can't escape. Ralph studied his friend, worry etched across his face. Don't overthink it. You got away from him, didn't you? Charlie lowered his head, his hands clenched into fists. I don't know anymore, Ralph. I can't be sure of anything. But there's one thing I do know, I have to go back to the cemetery. I have to apologize to him. Michael turned toward Sophia, who had remained silent in the corner of the room. She was watching Charlie carefully, her expression grave. Charlie, she finally said. If you truly want to be free from him, you must be sincere. Charlie lifted his gaze, his eyes filled with determination. I'll do anything. Whatever it takes to end this. I can't live in fear anymore. Sophia nodded, then turned toward the door. Good. We have to go to the cemetery. Now. There was no other choice. The group piled into the car, heading toward the cemetery, where Mr. Elliot still waited for the apology Charlie had to give. The cemetery, the air grew heavy, just as it had the night before. The gravestones felt like they were watching their every move, and every sound that echoed through the graveyard was sharp and unnatural, like an invisible hand was gripping their hearts. Charlie stood before Mr. Elliot's grave, his chest tight with unease. He sighed, looked into the distance, and began to pray. Mr. Elliot. I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't understand your suffering in life. I didn't understand the hatred you left behind. I just want to free myself from this. Please, forgive me. Ralph stood beside him, but he could feel it. A powerful pull radiating from the grave. A bitter, cold presence. Not from the night air, but from Mr. Elliot himself. It was as if his spirit was coiling around them, watching, listening. Michael swallowed hard, his voice laced with fear. Charlie, what if he doesn't forgive you? What then? Charlie didn't answer right away. Instead, he sank to his knees, placing both hands firmly on Mr. Elliot's tombstone. If you don't forgive me, I will accept your punishment, Charlie whispered. But I want you to know, I am not the same arrogant person I was before. I have learned my lesson. Whoosh! A violent wind tore through the cemetery, sending leaves scattering as an eerie howl filled the air. And then, a deep, ragged laugh echoed around them. But it didn't come from anyone living. It was him. You dare to beg for my forgiveness? The voice slithered through the air, rising from the very depths of death itself. Charlie gasped as a numbing chill spread through his body. Mr. Elliot did not forgive him. You disrespected me, the voice hissed, growing louder. Now you will pay the price. The light around them dimmed. And from within the darkness, a towering shadow emerged. Not a man. Not a ghost. Something worse. An ancient force of hatred, its form shifting like a living nightmare. Ralph lunged forward, trying to pull Charlie away, but an invisible force slammed into him, sending him sprawling backward. Michael and Jane were thrown back as well, completely powerless. Charlie felt the crushing weight pressing against his chest. Mr. Elliot had won. But, not entirely. Charlie stopped struggling. For the first time. He wasn't afraid. He lifted his head, staring directly at the dark entity before him. His voice was calm but firm. I was wrong. And I accept my punishment. But I will never become a part of you. I will not let you control me anymore. And with those final words, Charlie knelt before the grave of Mr. Elliot, his hands clasped together. Forgive me. For a moment, silence. Then, a blinding light erupted from the tombstone. A pure, radiant glow, not of this world. The darkness screeched, recoiling from the light. Mr. Elliot was no longer a terrifying shadow. The punishment had ended. The aftermath, as the sacred light illuminated the cemetery, the suffocating darkness lifted. Every shadow, every trace of malice, began to vanish. The wind roared, but this time, it wasn't cold. It felt like a storm breaking free, tearing through the curse that had held Charlie captive. But Mr. Elliot still stood there. Not as a monster, but as something else. He wasn't ready to leave just yet. The figure of Mr. Elliot was no longer a mere ghostly apparition. Instead, he had manifested as a colossal being, his entire body pitch black, his face grotesquely distorted, and his deep-set eyes filled with hatred. Charlie remained kneeling, unafraid. He knew he had crossed the line of danger, and now, every step he took was a confrontation with himself. But Mr. Elliot's final words rang out, a growling roar like a scream from the depths of hell. You have insulted me, and now you must pay the price. Ralph and Charlie's friends stood at a distance, too terrified to approach. Even though they wanted to help Charlie, the presence of Mr. Elliot felt overwhelmingly powerful, as if he could devour them all. Sophia stepped forward, holding a small cross in her hand. She looked at Charlie, her eyes filled with determination. Charlie, you have to face him yourself. No one can help you if you don't find the strength within you. Charlie lifted his head, looked at Sophia, and nodded. Her words struck him like a powerful force, awakening something deep inside him. He stood up and faced Mr. Elliot directly. I will not let you control me. Charlie shouted, his voice filled with defiance. You've harmed too many people. It's time for you to pay the price. Mr. Elliot let out a chilling laugh, echoing through the space. You think you can stand against me? A weak, foolish human with nothing but his own ignorance. His words were like a powerful blow to Charlie's pride, but Charlie refused to let anger consume him. He had chosen to abandon arrogance and had learned a painful lesson from his past mistakes. Yes, I am human, but I have the power to choose. Charlie declared, his eyes burning with conviction. I've made mistakes, but I will not become part of the darkness you've spread. Mr. Elliot, enraged, took a step forward, raising his hand as the shadows around him swirled like monstrous entities, preparing to attack. He pointed at Charlie and bellowed, "The price you must pay is your soul." Charlie felt an overwhelming force radiating from Mr. Elliot's hand, but he stood his ground, refusing to back down. He remembered all the years he had lived in fear, the nightmares that had tormented him. And at this moment, he understood, only forgiveness and courage could free him from this nightmare. "I will not let you take me," Charlie shouted once more, clenching his fists and striking the air. A powerful surge of energy burst forth from within him. The light from the grave continued to shine, brighter than ever before. Mr. Elliot took another step forward, but suddenly, an intense beam of light erupted from Sophia's cross, driving away the darkness. His screams grew fainter as he looked at Sophia, his eyes filled with rage. "You, how dare you stand in my way?" Sophia stood firm, unwavering. "We don't need your evil. We will banish this darkness forever." At that moment, a radiant wave of light from Mr. Elliot's burial site swept across the cemetery. He recoiled, his eyes filled with panic. "No. I cannot. I cannot be defeated by these insignificant beings." Sophia and Charlie simultaneously raised their hands, calling forth the sacred light from every corner of the graveyard. "Forgiveness," they both chanted, and that single word became the ultimate spell, striking straight at Mr. Elliot. "No. This cannot be." Mr. Elliot roared, but his form began to disintegrate, vanishing into the void of darkness. As the light gradually faded and the last remnants of darkness were driven away, Mr. Elliot was no more. There was no trace of him left in the air, and a serene peace enveloped the graveyard. Charlie collapsed to his knees, exhausted, but he felt as if an immense weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Ralph stepped forward, exhaling in relief. "You did it, Charlie. You really did it." Sophia gently placed a hand on Charlie's shoulder. "But remember, forgiveness is not the end. It's only the beginning. You have fought against your own fears and the darkness within you. That is the true victory." Charlie nodded, tired but satisfied. "I was wrong. But now, I will never let my arrogance lead me again." Charlie's friends gathered around, standing together as they gazed at the now peaceful cemetery. They knew they had overcome the greatest trial of their lives. Mr. Elliot was no longer a threat, but the lessons of humility and forgiveness would remain with them forever. As the last glow from Mr. Elliot's grave dimmed, the cemetery returned to its quiet, undisturbed state. The tombstones were no longer shrouded in darkness, and the chilling atmosphere that had haunted Charlie for days had completely vanished. Everything was now at peace, just like his soul. But this was not a peace that came easily. Charlie stood up, his head spinning, but his mind felt miraculously clear. He couldn't believe he had survived this nightmare. Everything from before, the sleepless nights, the shadows, the mysterious footsteps, was now just a thing of the past. He turned to look at his friends, his eyes shining with gratitude and appreciation. Ralph, Michael, Jane, and Sophia all stood in silence, but their eyes reflected immense relief, as if a massive burden had been lifted from their souls. None of them could believe they had made it through such a terrifying ordeal. Ralph stepped forward and placed a hand on Charlie's shoulder. "You did it. You really did it." Charlie simply gave a weak smile. "Thank you, all of you. I couldn't have done this without you by my side." He turned to Sophia, "If it weren't for your help, I don't think I'd still be here." Sophia nodded, her gaze calm and thoughtful. "You've learned an important lesson, Charlie. Don't let arrogance or fear control you. Live with humility, and always remember that forgiveness is the greatest strength." Charlie nodded, but deep inside, her words felt like an everlasting reminder. He turned to his friends, the people who had stood by him through all the hardships. "It's time for us to leave," Charlie said, his voice steady but firm. "We've done what needed to be done. Mr. Elliot is no longer a threat." The group nodded in agreement, walking together out of the cemetery. The world around them seemed far more peaceful now, but each of them felt a profound change within. They were no longer just friends, they were people who had faced something terrifying together, overcome fear, and found the strength to stand tall. As they left the graveyard, Charlie felt a sense of peace he had never known before. It wasn't just about being free from Mr. Elliot, it was something deeper, something within himself. He realized that forgiveness wasn't just about others, it was also about forgiving himself. He had paid a heavy price for his mistakes, but in the end, he had learned a valuable lesson. Night fell, and the group returned to Charlie's house. The atmosphere in the village no longer felt gloomy, and the moon shone brightly in the sky, illuminating every corner. Charlie sat at the table, holding a cup of coffee, looking at his friends. They looked back at him, smiling, as if there was nothing left to worry about. Ralph, sitting across from him, spoke gently. "You know, Charlie, I never thought you'd change like this. I thought you would always be the same, arrogant and indifferent to those around you." Charlie chuckled softly. "I didn't think I could change either. But life has a way of making you change, whether you want to or not. Today, I learned that true strength comes from facing your own fears." Michael raised an eyebrow. "So, does that mean you're committed to living a humble life from now on?" Charlie met Michael's gaze without hesitation. "Yes. I will live that way, and I will never forget what I've been through." The group nodded in understanding. They could see that Charlie had truly changed, not just on the surface, but deep within his soul. He was no longer the arrogant person he once was, he had grown, matured, and was ready to face life's challenges with a new perspective. Sophia looked at Charlie, her expression gentle. "You've crossed an important threshold, Charlie. Let this be a lesson that stays with you for life." Charlie smiled. "Yes, I won't forget. And I will live true to myself." The group fell into a peaceful silence, savoring the calm of the evening. The fear that once haunted them was gone. They had overcome it together, and life would go on, but they would never forget the events of those haunting nights. Long after that night, no one dared to enter the cemetery after dark. But deep down, they all knew that evil could never win as long as forgiveness and humility guided the human heart. Charlie was no longer afraid. He had conquered himself. This story delivers a profound lesson on humility and the power of forgiveness. Charlie had to confront his fears and past mistakes, but through them, he realized that true liberation comes from facing the darkness within and seeking forgiveness. The story also emphasizes that change does not happen overnight, but true transformation begins with accepting oneself and learning from one's mistakes.